everyone, and welcome to another Scots Way podcast. And today I am joined by Carla J. Easton. Hello, Carla.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. I'm very well, thanks. And today you're on to talk mainly about Since Yesterday, Unsung Pioneers of Scottish Pop. So for those who don't know, what can you tell us about that?
So it's a documentary I've been making with friends for about 5 years now, and it's sort of like charting the history of all ghetto bands in Scotland. So telling the stories of a lot of bands, letting people hear their music, just to create a nice sort of like historical context of women making music in Scotland to benefit future generations.
So what was the kind of initial spark? You know, you said you've been thinking about it for a long time, or it's been working on it for a long time. What was the thing which thought, yeah, this is a story that needs to be told?
I mean, it all sprung up from me just being an avid record collector, you know, and I used to DJ with my friend Jenna years ago, and we'd play vinyl and share stuff with each other. And I really got into girl groups, like predominantly American girl groups from the early 60s. And I always remember Jenna turning up, being at a party we were DJing at, being like, "You are going to love this," and whipped out a 7-inch of Since Yesterday by Strawberry Switchblade. And I just couldn't believe what was coming out of the stereo. Especially at the time I was living in Edinburgh. So for something that obviously referenced the records that I loved so much from America in the 70s to be more recent, but also local and just down the MA, it was brilliant, because I'd started playing in bands by that point. So it was like, wow, I can identify with this. And that led to just an obsession with trying to find more. You think if there's one, there's got to be others. And, just searching through fan forums and blogs, and eventually discovering the twin sets and the ettes and the little fragments of information I could read about them wouldn't lead to the music. I couldn't get access to the music, and that really frustrated me. So you kind of put it to the side, and then over the years find more bands, more girl bands from Scotland. And skip forward to like 2016, I was working on a Teen Canteen video with Blair Young, who was directing it, and the conversations just sort of turned to how ghetto bands are represented in music videos, and then a general discussion on, I think Blair made the comment of, there's not been that many all girl bands in Scotland. And I was like, this is my moment, like hold my pint till I tell you everything I know. And I just said, I've always thought someone should make a documentary on it. And I didn't envision it would be me doing it. And that was it, really. It just kind of went from there.
So did Blair kind of encourage you and say, well, it sounds like if anyone's going to do it, it is going to be you? I mean, what was... it's a big thing from going, somebody should make this, to going, I'm going to make this. That's quite a jump.
I think it's always been that thing. Like, I came up through art school, and as sort of my practice was kind of video art and video installation, but that would be kind of like a 3-minute thing at most. Most of my stuff was quite short and on loops and installation. And I think I've got a very DIY attitude, and Blair certainly worked his way up in music video and production DIY. He founded Forest of Black in the 90s and stuff. So I think together, I thought we could do it, but on my own, I was like, I wouldn't know where to start. I've no sort of experience in something of that scale. And but also Blair, like me, is a massive record collector. We've constantly made playlists or CDs for each other throughout our friendship, and so it felt like, all right, this is a cool thing for us to do.
But that step from saying, what is the first step? If someone was thinking of making their own music documentary, what is the first kind of step that you do?
Give up your social life. Give up your social life.
Friends and family.
Yeah, no, I think you've got to be really passionate. Immediately it was like, right, okay, let's compile a list of the bands and start tracking down the members and see where they are and see if we can contact them. So, reaching out to a few people we might know, or again, back trawling through blogs, looking for comments, any kind of clues. Like, you really are starting the treasure hunt straight from the off. But I mean, we didn't even think about how are we going to make this, how much is it going to cost or anything. I think it was like within a week, we'd tracked down Jeanette from the McKinleys and we're at her house in Dunbar interviewing her. We just kind of went for it, really.
So a good time now, because you mentioned the McKinleys and a few other bands, to talk about the bands who are going to feature, because the reason this documentary is being made is because they aren't better known. So give us some background into a few of them. McKinleys sound fascinating, I have to say.
Yeah, so we start back like ground zero are the McKinleys. And they were active in the very early 60s, two singing sisters from Edinburgh, Jeanette and Sheila. Sadly, Sheila's passed away now. A couple of singles on Columbia, Parlophone were really interested. They toured with the Beatles on their first UK tour, opened for the Stones at Wembley. I think at one point they had a range of fashion designs being made specifically for the McKinley girl. Just really, really great. So that's sort of like our ground zero. And then there's a bit of a gap. And as far as we can work out, the next all-girl band is the Ets, who also came from Edinburgh, and they were sort of like late 78, 79. They seem to be the first example of women going the next stage and picking up instruments and playing rather than relying on session musicians. But it was very of the time, very punk, very DIY. So they did maybe like 10 gigs. Very much operated around like the time of the Scars, the Fire Engines, the Water Boys. And then after 79, it really kicks off into that post-punk era, where we see, well, basically a lot of mass unemployment, but also a government where it was very easy to get benefits so you could afford to be creative. So that's where it really kind of kicks off. So we've got in Glasgow, Sophisticated Boom Boom, Strawberry Switchblade, the Rutkowski sisters start coming through, who were Sunset Gun, and Louise was in This Mortal Coil. In Edinburgh, we get another set of sisters coming through called the Twin Sets. There's loads of bands, excuse me if I missed some. So there's this really exciting period, and his latest Flame come through as well. And then we go to the 90s, where again, it's that American thing coming through and influencing. So Riot Girl and the birth here of Lungleg, Pink Cross. And then we've sort of finished turn of the millennium, like 2000 to 2010, and look at the Hedrons just before social media really took off. And it became much easier to get your music out yourself without sort of the backing of a label.
What's really interesting is that it seems that every kind of wave, if you like, of the people you've mentioned were influenced by music coming from outside Scotland rather than their own. You know, what you seem to be doing is painting a kind of linear, look, this is a linear line through everyone, but actually they were kind of getting their music from overseas, which suggests that, again, they didn't know about each other. It was almost like they were starting their own ground zero. Oh, this has never happened before, so we'll go and do it.
I know, and that's what's been quite fascinating, and that was a real sort of motive for me to do the documentary, you know, coming out and coming up through the music scene in an all-girl band, and then noticing other bands come out like Skinny Dipper, Honey Blood, Braticus, Sacred Paws, and you were like, okay, there's this little boom of it happening again, but I always knew that it had happened in previous decades. So you wonder and question, would there be gaps, or would we not use the term girl band? Would we use just the term band if there was this traceable history and you did know about each other and you didn't think, you know, I remember when Teen Canteen started out, it was like, what's it like to be in an all-girl band? And you turn up at venues and folk be like, where's the band? And you're like, we're right here. And you know, like you'd fallen in from outer space and you were this new concept, and we're not. So I'm sort of like, okay, well, in order to progress in the future, let's document the past before it's lost and make that more available to people.
I mean, that's often the problem, I think, with the way that history is told, that if you've never seen what went before, if you don't know, if certain stories aren't told, then you do think that God, might we the first people to do that? And as a result of that, a lot of people just don't, because they think, well, this has never happened before. So there must be an idea that by telling this story, you hope to kind of not just join the story together, but also let people know that there is a good history of this.
Massively, and like, you know, a huge thing for me was making it just because I'm a music fan. I keep saying that, and I wanted to get the stories and I wanted to get the music and stuff, but you end up looking at the social issues and the cultural issues that come with all ghetto bands, and you can't not discuss those things, you know, like how hard it is, the sexism you would face, whether that's like you get fired for being pregnant, comments, how you're told to dress, how you're told to behave. So you have to kind of talk about these things too. But ultimately, I wanted to make a documentary that I would have liked to have seen when I was 15, because when I was 15, growing up in a small town, it was acceptable for me to be in the audience. But when I tried to be in a band or start a band, that was not acceptable. And, you know, I went to high school with Debbie from Teen Canteen. We've known each other since we were 11. She's my best friend. But it wasn't till I was 29 I said, do you want to be in a band together? And I just feel like if we normalize collectives of women picking up and playing together, then that's good. Because in the pop world, the pop vocal group world, that's okay. It's okay for collectives of women to get together, sing, perform pop songs. They have long careers. They sell out stadiums like Destiny's Child, TLC, the Supremes, Spice Girls, you know. But when it comes to actually a collective of women who are playing their own music and writing their own music, we've not got that level yet. We had a hint of it with the Bangles.
Yeah.
But it's not been, you know, where's the female equivalent of the Beatles? Where's the female equivalent of Coldplay? You know?
Yeah, it's that idea that there were certain things, as soon as a woman picked up a guitar, it was, I'll put that back down. There was certain roles which were allowed. And do you think that still pervades today? Is there still that feeling?
There seems to be an issue with ghetto bands, because, you know, we've got like PJ Harvey and Chrissy Hind and Stevie Nicks and all that, but for some reason there seems to be a stumbling block somewhere within the industry when it's 4 or 5 girls. And I don't understand it, and I don't have the answers, but I think these are good questions to be asking.
And again, going back to this idea that if people know that this has happened before, perhaps in the long run, it won't matter. Just people go, well, I'm allowed to do this because it's happened before. Yeah,
I think so. And I think what's been interesting is everyone that I've interviewed so far, I mean, we're still very much in a working, we're still not finished the documentary, so there's still more interviews to do. But so far, and peers today in the scene I'm in, we all just started bands.
Yeah.
You know, and then people start calling us Ghetto Bands, and I'm not, the irony is not lost on me that we all have to use this term someone else has given us to now be able to tell these stories. Like, it's a bit of a paradox, to be honest, but yeah, it's interesting.
So you've recorded quite a few interviews already. As that must be fascinating to actually go and speak to these people themselves and see what it was like for them. Was that kind of eye-opening for you?
Yeah, it's gold to me, you know, like to get firsthand accounts of particularly the scenes that they were coming up in. I mean, I'm obsessed with kind of popular and social culture, and, you know, what was it like? What was that club like? What was that rehearsal room like? And, you know, like, it's actually quite nice as a musician interviewing other musicians, because you can talk about, like, you know, what it's like when you have to like sound check and you hate the sound of a drum snare, or, you know, being in these dingy rehearsal rooms where you're like right up to an amp with no earplugs in, or, you know, being on small tour vans and there's 5 of you in one bed to cut down tour costs. Like, it's all it's all really great to hear all them and exciting. And even now, like, because, well, my band's not active at the moment, so it's nice to sort of collectively reminisce on those things as well. But I think the one thing that's been quite apparent is that whoever we've spoken to so far, certainly the local scene around them has been supportive and has been nurturing. So it just seems to be when it's like there's some sort of link missing of when it goes to the next phase from grassroots.
And you mentioned that most of the bands that you're talking about are kind of pre-social media. Do you think that has promoted a change in the kind of support you're talking about? Do you think it's easier to meet like-minded people kind of in that way?
I'd hope so. I think social media is also hard and a bit of a pressure, but certainly you can have safe spaces within it and communities. There's there's a Facebook group at the moment called Pop Girls, which has been set up by some younger singer-songwriters coming through the scene right now, and it's really wonderful to see how they all support each other and help each other and communicate to each other. And it's a safe space to ask questions if you don't know something, which is certainly not something that I had when I started out in my first band. It was more your offline community and try to, like, you know, I'm going to book a venue and draw a flyer and my friends got a band so they can support and we'll just put it on. So I think it can work, and I think that's good for that.
So you started a Kickstarter to help fund the film, which seems to have gone spectacularly well.
Yeah.
When we first spoke about having a chat, it was before it had started. And we went, oh, maybe in a couple of days you see how it goes. And it went right through your initial thing within about 24 hours, I think.
I know, it was unbelievable. It's really overwhelming. It's great for the team making the doc, but I think it's really great for the bands as well to see that there's an audience. It demonstrates there's an audience wanting to hear these stories and these songs. And that's quite a powerful thing, using a platform such as crowdfunding, I guess. You know, you have an idea and you make it, and you don't know if other people are going to be into it or not as well. But now the Kickstarter, we set an initial target of 10K, and I think it was maybe like 36 hours or something. We'd surpassed it. So we're in the position now where we're almost at our first stretch target, which is great. And I guess it's really important to say the Kickstarters for funding to use archive, which is so expensive. It's solely for archive, the Kickstarter. It wouldn't fund the entire documentary, sadly. But we're almost at 20K. And if we could get to 25K in our stretch targets, that would be great, because it would allow us more access to use the archive in the documentary, which frames it nicely in its historical context. But also get an archive producer on board to help go through it all, because there's a lot to catalogue, and people are coming forward like, oh, I've got this demo tape from here and I filmed that gig there and I took these photos at this flat party that band played at then, and it's brilliant. But you're just like, wow, there's so much stuff out there that people are now realising the cultural value of it.
That must be so satisfying, but for not just for yourself, but for the bands as well, as you say, because it says that the interest was always there. I mean, I don't know if you thought at the beginning, are we going to get enough footage to make a feature-length documentary? And now, from what you're saying, you could have a director's cut with, 3 hours.
Right. Do you know, it's just that way where, like, there is some archive, like moving image archive, that either doesn't exist just because of the era. Like, we're lucky now that anytime I go out, I've got a video camera in the palm of my hand and my phone. In the late 70s, you didn't have a video camera when you went to a gig. So there's like lost archive or archive that doesn't exist, but that actually puts us in a really good position to create new content or new archive, where I think it's really important making a music documentary that you hear the music. You know, you don't want to just hear 30 seconds that's in the background while someone's talking about it. There's nothing worse than finishing a documentary and then being like, right, where can I go and hear the stuff, you know? So we'd quite like to bring on maybe some animation and just also really help bring the scene alive and the energy of when it was being made.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I didn't realize that. I didn't want to give away any secrets, but you're looking to maybe create your own mini videos or for the tracks that there isn't footage.
Yeah, and we thought animation would be quite nice conceptually, like as well as being accessible and producing like a really beautiful film. It's also like, if you think about the animated world, all girl bands rule. You know, they go to outer space and play world peace concerts. They travel in time. They're like almost superheroes, like Josie and the Pussycats, or Gem and the Holograms, or Barbie and the Rock Stars. And so it's quite a nice conceptual way to do it. Like, well, if it exists in the dream world, why is it not existing in the real world yet?
And, you know, talking about how expensive it is for archive footage, I presume that is the big companies that are charging a lot, like BBC or Channel 4 or whoever, rather than someone who's got it on their...
Yeah, no, we found it a lot of like fans or people who were around at the time the bands were active have just been so forthcoming with their personal archive, and same with the bands, like which has been just really wonderful. But yeah, to contextualize it, like for theatre and broadcast release, say we wanted to use a minute of Strawberry Switchblade performing on Top of the Pops, that would cost us $3,000.
A minute, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. And to be honest, I'm used to making stuff with like zero money or very little money, but I'm like, wow, documentaries are expensive.
That's very much so, yeah. So would, and you maybe can't answer this yet, but would there be a soundtrack album, or is that a different thing altogether?
Oh, I'd love it. I think it'd be great. It's definitely a vinyl I want in my collection. It'll be a great compilation. You know, I'd love to see. I'd love to. It's just, that's the best thing about it, right? Is you hear about these bands, you track them down, you hear the stories, and then I've been lucky to hear the music via that process, and the music's as good as you think it's going to be. I keep saying to people, it's like the best record collection you're waiting to get access to, and there's so many like little demos or peel sessions or recorded stuff that never saw the light of day, and so it's really you want it to get out there. I want it to be there for people to find and listen to, you know?
It sounds to me like this is almost the ultimate version of the mixtape that you pass on to your pals and say, oh, you really want to listen to this? This is amazing. Except, you know, it's the ultimate.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Like, see, for our Kickstarter, really, really kindly, the Ets were like, right, well, why don't we'll make cassette tapes of our 4-track demo, which is the only thing they ever recorded, and they did it in one of their parents' front rooms. I think you can hear a dog at one point, but they were like, oh, we'll digitize it and put it on cassettes, but we're doing it the punk way, it's one side only. And I was like, that's cool, we'll help you get that process ready. And then it's like, right, we'll make 20 and we'll put 20 up and stuff. And I was like, cool, they've gone completely. And they were like, no way, that's so exciting. And, you know, I'd been chatting to Nicola Meehan on BBC Radio Scotland for a programme she was doing on women making music and talking about the doc. And so Nicola played a bit of the Ets and they're like, oh my God, we're on the radio. Like, it's just, it's so good to see. Or like Twin Sets have been featured in a few press and stuff. And one of their tracks got played on the radio recently, like, this is great. And I'm like, I know it is. And but the songs are so good.
And so it maybe be a good idea to talk about some of the other rewards that you were offering on the Kickstarter, because there were some great one-off things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the hunt for more one-off stuff, to be honest. But no, we've just tried our best to make it an affordable project that you could back and get involved in, because we're relying on an audience and music fans. So, you know, you could donate £1 to this project if that's all you can afford. That's totally cool, because every pound adds up. But yeah, we say a recommended donation of £10. And then the rewards start about 2025. So we've got a exclusive film poster that'll just be for the Kickstarter, being designed by Jen Davies, who's based in Glasgow. She's a brilliant designer, she's done some great work for like Glasgow Film Festival and stuff. And then we've got band t-shirts where it just lists all the bands. That's pretty cool. Private screening, so we hope to have a rough cut screening in December. It doesn't mean it's the finished thing, it'll just be like, we're going to view this as a team. The bands are all invited to see it for the first time, but you get to be there. So you could turn up in twin sets are like, Carla, this film's horrible, re-edit. I don't know if it will be that, but and just a nice Q&A. You can get a shout out in the credits, get your name in the credits, or maybe you want to dedicate it to someone and we'll thank them. And then for the sort of like bigger kind of rewards, they're more aimed at, I guess, if anyone wants to invest in helping the film. So like logo sponsorships or executive producer for any philanthropists out there. And then we've put a golden ticket up, which is basically join the team and be part of the creative process, which is quite pricey and no one's taken us up on it yet, but that's fine. They probably see how tired I am and are just like, I don't want to be involved.
Well, you being you, this isn't enough. You've started a new musical project as well at the same time. Can we talk a little bit about poster paints as well?
Yes, that is started in maybe April, first lockdown 2020. My friend Simon, who he's the guitarist in Frightened Rabbit, and he'd started playing live with me before the world ended, and he was like, oh, I've got this song for a short film, can you just do some oohs and ahs on it? But due to lockdown I was bored out of my mind. So instead wrote an entire song to him with lyrics and melodies and sent it, and he just liked it, so we just kept working that way. And now we've got over an album's worth of stuff trying to get mixed and decide what makes the album. And we brought out our first single, I think it was 2 weeks ago. It's hard to keep track of time. And yeah, it's been a really nice response. It's just a lovely, creative, collaborative friendship that's resulted in music that I think is stuff that we've maybe not had the chance to explore with other projects that we've been involved in.
And so there's an album's worth hopefully coming.
Oh yeah.
You've said it on here now, that's it written down. So apart from poster paints and since yesterday, have you been working on anything else? Have you had the chance to?
I have been, but then I was like, you know what? It's good to just have a time out and look after yourself, because like last year my Weirdo album came out, and you know, so like a new album came out, finished writing this album with Sai maybe in January, and I've been writing more solo stuff, and then I was just like, do you know what, just focus on one thing for a change. You know, it's not that I don't want to write, like I have written, I've got over an album's worth of material, and I'm just like, oh, maybe I should record that, or maybe I should do that, or maybe there's a better song that could replace that one. And then I'm just like, I've still not even played my Weirdo album live yet, you know. I want it to be quite nice to like play that live before you think about doing anything else.
And is that the plan eventually, to once we're allowed to play live again, is to do a full band album set, that kind of thing?
I'd love to. I'd really love to. It's so weird releasing music in the time we live in, because
yeah,
I mean, what, Weirdo, that album's not even a year old, and already it feels like that was about 2 or 3 years ago it was released. It's just nice. It's nice playing, whether that's to 10 people, whether that's to 100 people, whether that's to 500 people. And it's nice talking to people about music after you've performed, and meeting people at gigs. And it's nice someone buying your record at the merch table and you personally hand it over to them, you know?
I think that's that kind of interaction that everyone seems to be missing at some level, definitely. Well, Carla, it's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. Thanks very much for taking the time to do so.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.